Hello, I'm the GBA guy, and today I'd like to talk about DC Rebirth and just my thoughts on what's going on with this. For those who don't know, DC Rebirth is a continuity fixing event that DC is going to be launching in about a month or so. And it is not a reboot, to make that amply clear. It's just an event similar to 0 Hour or Infinite Crisis, or in the case of Marvel Now. And I'm going to talk about what I think can be good about it and what's bad about it. Few things that I'm liking about this is the fact that it uses the term Rebirth, which comes from Green Lantern Rebirth and Flash Rebirth, two of my favorite storylines, both written by Jeff Johns, who's my favorite comic book writer, and which he's also helping run this event. So that's one reason I'm I have a positive hope for this. But I also do like the fact that they're trying to incorporate parts from their past universe into this, which I found very lacking in the New 52, and is one of the many reasons why I have barely even touched any of the New 52 comics in recent years. But unfortunately, I have a considerable amount of negative expectations for this event. One being that they're doing some really unusual numbering choices with their comics. An example being is that they're bringing Action Comics and Detective Comics back to the numbering that they would be had New 52 not reset them to number 1. Action Comics is going back to 957, Detective 934, which I'm all for. I think those titles should never have been set back to number 1 in the beginning. That was just a marketing tool. But I want to see those titles hit 1,000. But as I expected, they would reset everything else back to their prior numbering, which, again, no problem with. But they're saying everything, including Superman and Batman, back to 1. Which kind of makes no sense, because it's been, 5 years since New 52, and they're saying these titles that are now just going to hit 52 back to 1. And it's things like this that sets a bad trend of publishers just not committing to their titles. It seems like no one wants to go take an extensive run. While 5 years is a decent runtime for a comic, honestly, I think an average that all comics should hit is about 7, and it just really doesn't make sense to send it back to 1 again. Granted, I don't think all comics should reach the multiple hundreds like Detective and Action, but they shouldn't be limited to just 50. I mean, a few other examples of this happening in comics is like one comic in Marvel, All New Hawkeye. Last year that had volume 1 of that comic, and this past year after Secret Wars, they rebooted that and made another volume of that. It's barely 2 years and we've gotten 2 volumes of the same comic. A similar thing happened with All New X-Men, which lasted 3 years, and then we got an All New X-Men again, a volume 2, after Secret Wars. Again, it's not that it wasn't a long time, but it's relatively short, and it really doesn't make sense to do it to just have a comic last for a few years. I think at least a little more than 4 or 5 years is kind of required for a comic to build up a considerable but not overwhelming backlog. And another thing that I really don't care for in this Rebirth event is that there are no Martian Manhunter titles. And I am just appalled by the fact DC has not given him much representation outside of Supergirl in the past few years. And that is, I don't know, he's one of my favorite characters, and it really irks me to see him get shafted so badly by DC. And one of my biggest qualms with this is, with the Rebirth title, is that DC is still keeping Batman Beyond in the DC universe. First off, he should not be in the main comic book universe. Initially, when they had this after Future's End, I was hopeful for this. I'm like, okay, it can work, but it doesn't. I don't care if I'm spoiling this, because the comic sucks. But Batman Beyond after Future's End had not Terry McGinnis, but Tim Drake, which makes no sense, because it ruins the whole fact that it's the struggle of a new Batman that is not like any of the other Robins, which he is now literally a Robin, taking over the mantle. That's what made the show great, and it's Tim Drake taking over, which again, if any of you have seen Return of the Joker, that it makes no sense. While I do understand it's different continuity, it still kind of sucks. That and the fact they made it a post-apocalyptic future. All these things just show that they have handled Batman Beyond horribly, and as much as I want to see more Batman Beyond content, DC is doing a horrible job of it right now. They're trying to incorporate him into the main DC universe, which doesn't work because now they have to conform his story to meet the current universe. And it ruins the mythos of Batman Beyond, which the TV show was building. That is one of my biggest qualms with Rebirth, that I honestly think the character should be left alone. Like Batman Beyond Universe, that comic book that happened a few years ago, they should have just kept that going as a side comic and not part of the main universe. Overall, I'm very hopeful for any fixing of the continuity they're doing with Rebirth, but I'm also very conscious about all of these things that DC have been doing recently and are still showing what they're doing with comics now. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe. What are your thoughts on DC Rebirth? Leave them in the comments below. And also, I plan on bringing this series back on a more regular basis since college, and it is really hard to make game reviews when you have to worry about tests and calculus and stuff like that. It can be overwhelming, and this will be easier, so just expect this for a few more weeks. Thanks for watching. See you next week.